So this thing that people are showing up to work on every single day, it has to be special. It can't just be a job, because there's a million of those out there,
right.
you know? And so it's like, we have to take care of our people, and part of that is culture. It also comes down to making the right business decisions too.
Yep. Before we get started with this episode, we have a major favor to ask you.
If you could subscribe, like, and comment, especially with somebody that you'd love to see on the show, we would really appreciate that, and it would be amazing.
This helps us more than you know. In fact, once we hit 1,000 subscribers, and that is our goal, we are going to choose 2 of you to come to our very first Shoreline Show meetup with our team and our past guest.
And if you want more of the Shoreline Show, you can get on us on all the major audio podcast platforms.
Now, let's get on to the next episode. Welcome to the Shoreline Show. We are so excited today. I'm Shelly Frody. I got Rennie Barton here, and we have a special guest, Nathan Jean.
Hey, thanks for having me.
From Kyros Agency. And we're going to be talking about all things super exciting, all things software development and computer programming.
I think we just lost half of our
I
followers.
know.
Yeah. So it's funny, because one of the things I had to learn early on was like how to like take the techie talk down a notch.
Right.
So when I first got started in software development, you know, learning how to write code and stuff like that, I was so excited. But I was talking to like C-suite people, and it just did not register to me that I'm like, they don't care about a lot of that like super technical stuff. And then I became a CEO, and I became a C-suite person, and then it really started to click. I'm like, yeah, I need to get this into an analogy. So I do a lot of analogies, right? Because
She actually said that. She actually said that before when she was talking to me about you. She said she's like, he actually. What word did you use? Like you're trendy,
I said you're
I guess.
more of a
not
creative than what you would normally think of as a software nerdy developer.
I think
you're not that
totally
person.
accurate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my teen years and getting into adulthood, I mean, that was really a lot of what I did was a lot of creative stuff. Like I played music, I played drums.
Right.
I dropped out of college, and at the time I was like really into graphic design. And so I was always doing a lot of artsy stuff. And then it was not until around like age 21 where I decided like, I'm going to learn how to program and write code, because I was designing a lot of websites and stuff, but and that was right around when I became self-employed. But I was like, man, it would be really great if I could make these things. Like I'm designing them, but I'm not like able to produce them. And so I taught myself how to code, and taught myself how to make like basic websites, and that's where it all kind of started. And I was like, this is my jam. I was like, this is really what I think I'm good at, you know?
Right. And you don't think of it as being a creative thing, but it really is.
It is. I do think in software engineering, I mean, it's engineering, so there's a lot of technical, you know, that has to go into it, but it's a lot of creative problem solving, because it's like you're reaching for a certain outcome, but how you get to that outcome, you have to be kind of creative in the constraints of the project or the budget or your team members' capabilities. And so, it is a lot of creativity. I think that's why I still love it so much, is because it's always a new problem to solve, and it forces you to think.
Well, now that we're entering a digital, I mean, I'd call it extreme digital age, where I think creativity in the digital form is going to be more real than some reality forms. Yeah, I see a lot on social media of like AI artists emerging. So it's kind of interesting. Like they make their whole profile, like on TikTok or Instagram or whatever, they're basically using AI to generate unique artworks, and then they're publishing that, and they get a really big following around that, and that's like all they do, and that's their job. And I'm like, that's amazing. Who owns the rights?
Well, that's a good question. That's the deeper question. Yeah. I think some would argue like the artists own the rights. I think a lot of folks are worried that some of these AIs that generate images, they base a lot of what their models are around like past images, right? And so, the argument is like, well, if you're using my artwork in the model, then you're using like my intellectual property in the model. So there's actually a lot of
does the company, so if you're using, let's say, DALL-E, does the company own the rights, or that created it, or do you as the data inputter own it?
I think the courts are going to have to decide, honestly.
And it's going to get wild.
There's a lot of lawsuits and stuff in the works I heard around that. Yeah. But to be honest with you, I don't really know what the right thing is for that. Because for me, it's like, well, I think if you're going to put data in your model, you probably need to get the permission to put that data in your model. And so it depends on, like, is that image... does it have a certain license on it, right? Like, is it public domain, or is it actually like protected intellectual property? If it is, you probably need permission to get that into your model. So
I don't think you would need to. I think everything in this world, including like podcasting, or here right now, it's not an idea we came up with on our own.
Right. No.
Right, and everything in this world is something we've seen, and the creative part is what do you do with it from what you've learned, and
that's true.
So
it's kind of like music.
100%,
you can play this certain chord progression, but you didn't invent that chord progression,
right?
So somebody can sue you because you played that chord progression, and that sounds just like this song. It's like, but it's my interpretation of it.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Right? No,
anymore.
There isn't.
Yeah, it's hard to find it, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. So, Nathan.
Yes.
Tell us what you were like as a child.
Oh boy, my second grade teacher used to call me young Jim Carrey. So I was pretty rambunctious and funny and goofy and kind of like the class clown. And then I think when I grew up a little bit more and became a teenager, I was a lot more anarchy punk, I had a lot of problems with authority. I definitely was a challenger, I guess is what you would call me. And then
boundary pusher.
Boundary pusher. But always was trying to kind of fill the role of like being the dad in the house, because my mom had she has 4 boys, including me, and then I have a little sister. And my little sister wasn't born until I was like moving out. But throughout like the high school days and stuff like that, it was more or less just like trying to be the man around the house. But I was a wild little kid, and then I think I grew up like pretty quick. And then after teenage years, like really getting into adulthood and stuff, I think that's where like the world really started to reveal itself a lot more.
Right.
And that's where I think I grew up and matured quite a bit. So but it was really honestly like the journey of becoming self-employed and the journey of becoming an entrepreneur and a business owner, that I think is really what really shifted my personality a lot.
Do you think that you were a rebel type thing, or do you think it was more like you didn't want to live in a box and you wanted to see why things did what they did and expand who you?
More of the latter. My mom always said I was like very resilient. So my dad actually passed away when I was a little kid, right? And so that affected me and my brother a lot. I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And then my mom remarried, I think, when I was like 8 or 7. And so 2 of my brothers, were with their dad. But I think that molded me a lot early on, and I think that probably impacted, my personality and my views on a lot of things. And it's not until adulthood really where a lot of that stuff kind of fizzled up and you had to wrestle with it and deal with it and mature from it. But my mom always said I was like very resilient, and I think that's true. I think I've always been pretty good at looking in the mirror and saying like, all right, like there's 2 options here, right? Like either you're a victim or you're not, right? Either you are gonna grow from this and take that, pain and learn and grow, or you're not, and I think that's true in almost every aspect of life. It's not 100%. Just life, family, it's in business, it's with relationships, it's you name it, So just being a very resilient person is not easy to do for some people, but for me it was always like pretty easy to do that. So because I'm a very logical person at the end of the day, so I think that helps.
Yeah, I think. So. Do you think that came from not having your father around at a young age?
Yeah, definitely the challenging authority, going against the grain type of thing for sure. And I think, when I became a teenager, right, I think that affected me a lot. And that's why I was like very punkish and like, I want to play drums and, rock and roll, right? And I did that for many years. I was touring in a van and, taking hobo showers in Walmart parking lots and like,
that's awesome.
the
That's
bar
fun.
star thing, right? And I did that for a few years. And then eventually I was like, I kind of want to be able to afford a house. And so I started taking a look at that
I can only do
path.
this so long.
Right. I started taking a look at that path and going like, all right, this is probably not going to help me get all of the things that I want out of life. It's a lot of fun and it's super fulfilling, but it's not, I don't think that this is the best path.
What
right?
was it that made that shift in your mind?
So
What was the transition?
a lot of it was basically seeing what I was capable of outside of music and outside of drumming, and just kind of not really seeing like a light at the end of the tunnel with that path, and looking in the future and saying like, okay, if nothing gets better, if this is the best we can do, this is what I have to look forward to. And then when I became self-employed at 21, that really opened up a lot of doors, I guess, in my mind in terms of like what's possible.
Right.
And then I realized like, actually, I'm pretty good at this. And if I really dedicate myself to this art form of like software development, coding, tech, all that stuff, I think I can get the things that I want out of life. And so that was actually really hard to put down drumming and to basically set all that aside to really pursue this. That was a pivotal moment, I think, in my life where I was like, I feel like I have to do this. Like my soul is telling me like I need to set this old life aside and move into this new one.
Yeah.
So
I don't think you ever thought about giving anything up. It's more that just shifting it to a different form of art,
yes,
right?
yep.
Like a buddy of mine told me that about sports, and he's just like, all they are is no different than like a lot of athletes. They're a lot of they're performers, and I was like, a performers. I never thought about calling an athlete a performer. They go, yeah, if you think about it, a lot of it is just acting. Like, right, you're out there, you're acting like you're catching a ball, and it's like, and like all the hype and all the stuff you find. And I guess I never. And same thing with you. You're in a band,
right?
And you have a creative side of that band. And you're doing your thing, but then you're like, I can shift this over to something and still achieve the goals that I'm trying to achieve, and that's buying a house, getting married, whatever it is.
Well, I think one of the cool things about like being a drummer and being a musician, actually a lot of that ported over into what I do. Like the whole process of like, here's this thing that we want to create. We don't really have it well defined, but maybe I can produce this, and this, and then that gets us like one step closer to the finish of the song. And then being a drummer, it's like very calculated in terms of like, you're playing this particular beat and you need to anticipate the next. So I feel like there was a lot of skills that actually translated over into what I do. And I don't know how my brain connected those things, but I did. And but yeah, I mean, I talk to my wife about this all the time because she asks me like, do you ever miss drumming? I'm like, yeah, I do. I do.
I think
but someday I'll pick it back up again. But right now I'm like, I'm not. It's just not.
So you don't drum at all anymore?
No, I sold all my gear and stuff right when I started this business. I completely stopped all of it, and because when I started the company, when I started Kyros, I was like, if I'm going to do this, like I have to go all in. It's basically like, in my mind, I was like, I got this and like one other thing, and that was my relationship with my wife. And like those are the two things where I'm like, that gets all of my attention and energy apart from taking care of myself and take care of the house and all that stuff, and like that's it. So I set that aside, knowing that like this eventually will become a hobby and a leisure thing that I might pick up someday. But right now I have sleeping babies at home, and so I don't think a drum set at home
Drums are
like
probably
really.
not the best idea.
So I'm just patient. I'm just patiently waiting. So
I think how the two tie together is drumming is very, and music in general is very much a mathematical thing, and people don't realize that. Like they always say, when you have kids in school, get them into the music program because that will help them in mathematics. And now what you do in computer programming, it's basically a bunch of equations as well.
I think being a programmer or a software developer or a coder or a software engineer, like whatever the label is, it's you start to think about like everything is a program. It's kind of weird. Because you see the trend, you can see that pattern like in a lot of different aspects of life. But yeah, I mean, if you look at like some of the brightest minds, you know, say like Edison or whoever, like a lot of these like historical figures actually had some sort of like musical training or like classical musical training. And, but it really is like drumming. When you create like a beat and a rhythm, it's a program. It's a loop, you know, it's a loop and it's a program. And I think, yeah, a lot of that translates over, oddly enough.
I think you do open your brain up when learning an instrument. You definitely open your brain up to, I don't want to call it another dimension, but it's kind of is, right? It's a whole nother thing that you're opening your, same thing they say about learning a different language. There's certain things in your life that you can do that it just expands your horizons. It's not an education more than it does actually makes you more intelligent, I guess I would say, in certain ways.
I think it's another state of mind. You know, I think a lot of folks nowadays are probably familiar with like, what state are you in right now? Like, what's your mental state, right? And so
that's good.
I think that's what it is. And then it puts you in that flow state too, like playing music. And so like same with what we do for our professions. Like at some point you have to focus and to achieve. And so you have to get into this like tunnel vision of trying to complete the thing that you're working on. And music is really kind of the same thing. You know, you have to focus in the moment. Otherwise you're just noodling on your guitar. You're just randomly hitting keys on a piano. And so.
How did you get into music? Because so like your dad, he wasn't around.
No. So I got into music when I was 6. So this is a funny story. Remember the rebellion? So when I was 16 years old, I was already working. I already had a job and I was already making some money. And my friend actually had a drum set and his dad was a guitar player. And I would go over to their house and we'd all jam. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I was also in band in high school and I wanted to join the jazz band. And I was like, I really want to get into drumming. And so at the time, my stepfather was like, no, we're not going to do that. You can't do it. And I was like, if I buy a used drum set, I can't return it. So I bought a used drum set at 16 and I brought it home. And I remember like,
why can't you return
because if you buy it used, like what are you supposed to do? Like bring it back? So I brought it home, I paid for it, and then I set it up in my room downstairs, and I would only play. I had like 1 hour to play when I got home, like off the school bus or eventually with my car, and I had 1 hour to practice every day. And before my stepdad would come home. And so I would only play for that 1 hour. And then eventually when I, had my own place at age 18, I could play whenever I want, right?
So you moved out at
I moved out at 18. But that's how I got into it. It was mostly as like, I really want to do this thing. You're telling me I can't do this thing. I'm 16 years old. I have a job. I work hard. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to do this because this is what I want to do. And so
is that something, because I know that's true for me, when somebody tells me that I can't do something. That gives me the motivation to
definitely
do it.
I'm definitely like that. If I'm told like you can't do this thing, it's like, can I not do it because you don't want me to do it, or I can't do it because I'm not capable of doing it? Because if it's I'm not capable of doing it, I'm gonna show you that you're wrong. So like that's just how I've always been. And it's like perfect. You gave me all the fuel that I need to go figure this thing out now. So
you definitely don't want to tell the wrong person that they can't do something.
No.
Because they'll show you that they can.
Well, it's just not supportive anyways, like who are you? You should just be like, you go do that thing, I hope it works out for you,
So what's one of the craziest things that you've run into in your business?
Well, there's definitely been a few. Quite for sure. I think the first thing that definitely comes to mind is when I first learned about City to Shore, and then I started to help out with the web app and things like that. And so the long of it is at some point in time I had teamed up with Grand Apps, John and Chris, and they were like, hey, we're having a lot of problems with this platform, and we're kind of struggling, and can you help us? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we were exploring a entry-level partnership at that time, and so I basically was just trying to help get this thing on track because it was clearly off track. There was offshore development and things were just not going very well with that.
Yep.
And I remember the craziest thing I think at one point was I was actually on my honeymoon and I got a call from Craig at like 3 o'clock in the morning and it was like, hey, everything's down. Pretty sure we just got ransomwared. And I was like, oh God. And so, so I was like, honey, I have to go take care of this thing.
She's like,
and
what's
she's
happening?
like, I'm going to sleep. And I'm like, okay, cool. You sleep. I'll go into so I went to the lobby in this Irish hotel lobby in Ireland and I just got to work and I found a backup of the database. Luckily I had it locally on my machine. And so I just started to do everything I can to roll things back. And so I think that was probably the craziest thing. I think the second craziest thing was we did a project. It was in the NFT space and everything was going very, very well. And then we slowly ran into some issues with like payment and we kind of let that drag on a lot farther than what it should have. And then I think at the end, like we were basically stiffed like $60,000, and so that was a big pain. And we started looking into
a bunch of NFTs, but no more.
Yeah, we started looking into a lot of legal, and then realized very quickly it's actually kind of a shame. Businesses don't actually have a lot of recourse if you go through the legal process. And like, let's say you sue a business, you've paid a lot of time and dollars to lawyers at that stage, but a business can basically just file bankruptcy and you can't, there's no guarantee that you actually can collect it. So when we kind of realized all that stuff, we basically just cut our losses. And I was like, this is a very important learning lesson here. It's like, so I think that's probably the second craziest thing that happened.
So what were these NFTs?
So it was like fantasy football, and you would buy these like these packs of cards, and you'd use these cards to assemble a league or a deck, and you'd submit that for like fantasy football tournaments.
Great idea.
Right. So it was a great idea, and it was a really great project, and things were going very, very well. And then like towards the end, I think maybe some things happened on their end, like with financials, and then we just kind of kept getting the runaround type of thing, and then that's where friction really started. And then after a while, it flipped upside down after that. So
was that your first, or do you do a lot of NFT projects?
I think that was our first large NFT project. We had done like a couple smaller, like much smaller NFT projects when that was really hot, and then after that I kind of shut that down and said, NFTs are cool, but I just don't think that this is something that we really want to get involved with.
Do you think NFTs are going to be the future?
I don't think so anymore, actually.
Really?
I think not until virtual reality or augmented reality gets farther along. I think where NFTs have their place is, like, let's say I have glasses and they're augmented reality, and, you know, there's a ton of people using these things now. It's really integrated into our day-to-day. I think NFTs probably have a place where it's like, I'm going to go buy these Nike Air Force Ones, and I'm going to get the NFT for that as well, so that like in virtual reality or augmented reality, like my character also has that pair of sneakers, right? And I think something like that makes a lot more sense. But the current, like, here's an NFT of like a, you know, piece of artwork, and there's examples of this where like people bought like certain NFTs for like millions and millions of dollars, and now they're only worth like 50 grand or something like that, you know? So I think because of that, like the hype, I think around them has
to be more mainstream.
I think it has to be more than just, I own this piece of artwork and it's the Mona Lisa. It's like that has been played out, I think, and the market has shown us that there's still a market for that, but it's not nearly as like profitable or as big as possible. I think where NFTs really make a lot of sense is where you can really use that thing more than just like owning it, you know, and just being like, I'm the exclusive owner of this thing.
Right.
So
I wonder in the future if NFTs, like I think about real estate in general, it's like as you go into virtual worlds, I think we've progressed so fast. I would say in the last 10 years, I feel like in the last 2 years, it's slowed down a little bit more than it has, I'd say, the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, we were making major gains in that. Yeah. So you look at things like certain companies like OpenSeas and all these ones, even Disney, the amount of money they were putting in NFTs, and because I own some Disney NFTs, just because I feel like anybody can create one, but if you're going to buy NFTs in that space, you might as well buy something that people collect.
Yes. Yep.
So if you turn around and you're looking at NFTs and you're saying, okay, I believe in the future we will be in digital worlds.
Yes.
I don't question that, because I think even what we're doing here sitting around, it'll be exact same and no different, but people that have disabilities, or when life gets really hard and expensive, they're going to be like, wait a minute, I can go and I can immerse myself in a digital world.
Yeah.
People do it already in video games. I'm saying way more on intense.
Yep.
And then you're like, okay, well, I can go to your house right now and I say, okay, you in a home? So I can go to your home and say, okay, and people won't understand it in the beginning, but what would stop me to say, hey, I want to buy the digital rights to your house. And you're going to be like, what does that mean? Be like, well, your house is worth, I don't know, I'm going to make up something, $500,000.
Yeah.
I want to turn around and I want to buy the digital rights to it. And you're like, sure, what are you going to give me? I'm like, 50 grand. You're like, 50 grand and I still can buy it.
I'll take it.
You take it, right? Yeah. But what happens and people are like, well, why is that why would I buy that? And I'm like, well, in the future, the right homes, in the right areas, I think you're going to find that people, this is just my theory, but I think what you're going to see is, okay, Disney right now is creating a whole Disney World, Disneyland. From what I understand is they're creating this where you can walk in the street, you can go down the street of Disney, you can ride a ride in Disney, you can literally buy stuff at a store and have it shipped to everything. It's all done through NFTs, right? Yep. So then if I own, right out of Disney, I own an Airbnb, the digital rights down the street from Disney. And I think that's where the world will eventually go.
Yeah, I think so. I think the hard part is access to the digital space. And so right now that access is done through our phones and it's done through our laptops. I think until like augmented reality and virtual reality really get more commonplace, because the hardware has to get trimmed down a little bit more so I can wear that contact lens that allows me to have AR. I think that's where there's going to be that big explosion, right? Because now it's like, yes, I see that I'm walking down the sidewalk and I see this building and I see this building, but there's like augmented advertisements on the building and things like that. Like, I think that's where a lot of this stuff is really going to help kick off those type of things. But I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think that's it.
If they can get the majority of people to be in that space.
If you give me an augmented reality contact lens, I will wear that thing every single day. Yeah. I'll wear it every single day. Not a virtual reality, because that's the thing is like the VR headsets, nobody wants to wear those.
But even if they are bulky, let's say your kids, you get older, your kids, and everybody's there. Mm-hmm. They're like, Dad, I'm not going to come to your house. Throw on these glasses, bro, and we can go to Disney together today.
That's true. That's a good point. I never thought of that.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say no. You know, you want to hang out with your kid. That's where your kid's hanging out, right?
And then you add the aspect of if you have drones. Let's say, hey, like I'm telling you right now, hey, why don't we go to the Grand Canyon? Mm-hmm. You throw on these, and there's drones that can actually have you explore further and deeper into caves and things that you'll never be able to do.
That's true.
And I don't know, it's crazy, but it's just a thought. I think we could get there. I think we can get there. I think it could be cool.
I'm one of those weird people where I'm like, if I can still be me, but I can be like a robot, then make me a robot as long as I can still be me. Yeah. So I would sign up for that experiment. I would, but it's I don't think that's ever going to happen in my lifetime. I don't think so.
It's happening fast. Yeah. I think the economy's slowing down at the moment. I think that's the goal, is to slow down the economy. We've not, I remember, I think it was Elon Musk that said, I think it was him that mentioned, he goes, I don't think we'll always be in time in history where we can evolve and innovate as fast as we are today. Yeah. There's only certain periods of time, even within the history of things happen, like wars happen. Oh, yeah. There's natural disasters, disruptors, and that slows things down substantially. Mm-hmm. And if you're throwing billions of dollars towards war, you're not throwing it into companies like NASA where you're trying to figure out things, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, so my generation, I was born in 1990. My generation is the last generation of kids that knows what life is like before the internet was just this thing in your house. Yeah. I remember when AOL came out. I remember when my family got a, Windows 98 machine in there, and I remember what life was like prior to all of that, or having like cartoons on demand, right? And like being a kid and just watching cartoons in the morning, right? And like, so if you as a measurement, like if you look at that and then you look at, okay, 33 years later, I don't think it's any doubt that like things are going to continue to get crazier and crazier.
30
some
years.
in a good way, some in a not good way,
Definitely.
but a lot of it is everything is going digital, and it's going to continue to go that way. And I mean, if you look at like the tech boom of the 90s, like that's kind of, I'm like, man, I wish I was born like 10 years earlier and I could have like, you know, knew what I knew today back then, because I maybe could have been part of that .com, you know, burst or bubble. And, you know, but in some ways we're going through different ones, you know, just different
I think we
booms
are.
and busts, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we're always going through it. I think right now what the stage we're going through in society is, I think you have to have the pauses at times where it's like you have this like this
Well,
relax.
people have to adapt
Yeah.
to things. Like I hear you guys talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, holy crap! I don't know if I can adapt to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, even AI.
my parents certainly can't adapt to that.
No.
People
You know?
will though. It amazes you how many people actually will. And I like one of the things, and I have mentioned this in another episode, but I had one of my agents on my team call me, and they're like, Rennie, they're like, hey, I'm worried about the superintendent, or they're bringing 5G in. I'm super nervous about it. And there's this big thing about 5G. But we do it right now is there's very few civilizations that have chose not to progress with society, and they still are. Amish.
Yep.
Now you go down and you start to see them now, and they're starting to carry cell phones.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're starting to put the lights in the back of their trailers, right, for safety. And I think they can hold off for a period of time, but I think it's easy when life is really good to scale back. When life is fine, life is good. I don't need to get involved in augmented reality because I can pay to go to Disney. Why am I going to do it?
Exactly.
Right.
But if you're in the middle, if you're disabled, so that's a reality to an individual, but you can do that to mass amounts of people by a war. Let's say a war, or like anything happens where you're like, I don't have money today.
Yeah.
We're going into a Great Depression or something like that, where you're like, technology is advanced and I can still enjoy time with my family. I can enjoy things, and I don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that chaos forces change. So when your life gets more turbulent in whatever way, that if you're a proactive person, like you're gonna have to do something about that. And sometimes that's actually like picking up new tools, you know? So I think with like a lot of the tech advancement stuff, I mean, even in my space, it's like you kind of have to evolve, and you have to adapt to some of the disruptive tech that comes out, and you either have to harness it and use it to move forward or not. And
Well, you think
there's
of the
pros and cons to either. It just depends on like the perspective. If like, are you an Amish person, or are you a person like me where I go, oh man, like AI is really making a surge right now. Like, how do I stay competitive and, you know, use this and leverage this so that it helps all of the people in the tribe that show up to this place every single day.
I like how you said that.
Yeah.
So
think of
definitely
over the last 3 years, you said chaos forces change.
Yeah.
Well, how much chaos have we had starting in 2020?
Oh God.
And what
Yeah,
kind
a
of change did that force in our industry?
Yeah.
time.
Like it was crazy. Like
the housing
we're
market
showing
industry,
houses virtually.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
they talked
right?
about that for years. Oh, you can show houses virtually, and we're like,
Nobody's going to want to do
nobody's
that.
gonna want to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
Then
they
everybody
were
did.
doing it then.
Yep. Or
So,
Uber, right?
yeah.
When Uber came out,
Yep.
everybody was like, nobody's going to do that. That's wild. Why would you get in a stranger's car? And, you know,
Right.
so.
I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest things that it has held things up for that space is fast and like really good internet. Mm-hmm. You start to go in a lot of parts of the country, even the United States now, internet sucks. You want me to go in a virtual world, and now I'm talking,
Right.
and you're like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Everything's cutting in and out.
like that's not a thing, but now they're starting to solve that problem, like a Starlink now.
Yeah, my grandparents, they live up in Kalkaska. They can't get high-speed internet because the cable company just won't run the cable to it.
Right.
And so we're like, hey, you guys should really check out Starlink because maybe that'll help get your, you know, internet speeds faster, you know.
Did they
And
buy
so
them?
I think they did, actually, yeah. I think my
Get the
grandpa's
box, the black box that says Starlink.
I'm pretty sure they did. So, yeah,
for
I mean, the innovations that happen in tech are really important, I think, for especially the folks who don't necessarily have all the same means.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
well, look at Ukraine.
Yeah.
Ukraine, when I think, it was Russia, that Putin shut down all the internet.
Yeah.
Those people still could get access through
through Starlink.
Yeah,
right.
through Starlink and using VPNs.
Yeah.
Through Starlink.
Yeah.
And they were able to still have access to freedom of information. They still were able to do that.
Yeah.
So that kind of tells you when bad things happen, people will find a way.
Well, thank God for capitalism then, right? You know, because it's like, that's a great argument for capitalism. It's like, well, thank God somebody produced this thing and it was available.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, otherwise that wouldn't have been an option. But I mean, with tech, you know, there's always, it's always going to be a double-edged sword. You know, it's here's a hammer. Are you going to build something good with a hammer, or are you going to hit somebody in the head with a hammer? You know, and so with tech, I think it's really kind of the same thing, and people really need to look at it that way. It's like, this can be used in a very good way, can also be used in a very bad way, but that's true for almost everything.
The thing is, it's going to progress either way.
Yes.
The question is, are you going to be the player in the game that does it for good?
Yes.
Or are you going to be a player in the game that uses it for bad?
Right.
And
that's why I
that's
laugh.
the question.
I've had people over the past years, you know, they're like, can you help me hack my boyfriend? They made me mad. And I'm like, get away from me. Don't talk to me. Like, no. Like, no. Like, we're on the white hat camping side of things. We're like, we're only doing good work over here. Like, we're not doing anything like that, you know, like, so, but yeah, it's true. It's true. Tech can be a really good thing, and it can also be, if it's not, you know, in the right hands, or if people put malfeasance in it, you know, then it can do a lot of damage.
I believe that the United States right now, we're in a point where, and you know what I struggle with this podcasting? I don't remember what I said in future episodes, so I may have said this before, but I believe as the United States, we're recolonizing at the moment. I believe that, and I haven't said this to you, but I believe that you're going to find communities of people that realize that they want to embrace tech, but they want to also protect their digital rights and their information. And I think you can do that. And it came from a place of, actually, is weird, and this is gonna sound weird, but I started to have these thoughts in my head where you can't survive as a society unless you're in a dictatorship.
Interesting.
I started having these thoughts, and I'm like, why? And I started thinking about North Korea. And I'm like, well, we don't know. It's awful. I'm not saying it's good.
No,
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, but we don't know anything of what's going on over there because none of their people have internet. We don't have any. We don't have the guy that's in a camp over there. We don't have any idea of anything that's going on in North Korea. And if we're going into a data world where data is the most important thing, where even the United States now, we're swabbing our mouths and sending them in because we want to know our DNA, and what our ancestry is. So we're starting to, so we don't know about people in countries that we don't have that information. And you look at China and with TikTok and we have a lot of these things, and I might be treading dangerous ground here a little bit, but you look at it and say, and you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. China is looking at it and saying, they understand the game. They know data, if I can collect it. So when our government comes out and says, hey, stay off of this. And we're like, no, because we have freedom. We can do whatever we want. I'm going to stay on that platform. And then you add that to the aspect of, you look at a lot of these famous people, like Elon Musk, Trump, all of them. They want to own their own social media platforms. Because they know data is the most important thing that they can have. So you add all that into a bundle. Is it possible for recolonizing that you could sit there and say, what I mean by recolonizing is because you can, a township or a municipality say, hey, we're going to run this. You're able to do everything you want, the same, but instead of it running through an individual computer, it's a massive computer.
Decentralized.
100%. Yeah.
Decentralization, I think, is a big thing that I think a lot of people need to consider when they create, especially creating like new software, new databases, all of that stuff. You know, blockchain can be very transactionally expensive, right? So you want to decentralize things, you would probably want to use some sort of blockchain technology to do that, but it can be very expensive with the gas, right? And so hopefully somebody will come in and solve that problem, but no matter what, it's ones and zeros on a computer somewhere, and that's electricity, and it's going to cost money, and you know, but yeah, I do think it's possible. I mean, I wish we lived in a world where I could just be like, all the data that you have on me, I want it
It'd be amazing.
back, and I want it gone, and you have to prove to me that it's gone on your end. I just don't know how we're ever going to get there.
Yeah.
I don't think personally, I don't know if it's going to be possible with the existing platforms that already exist, you know.
Yeah.
I was scrolling on Facebook, and I'm rarely ever on Facebook, and I saw one of my longtime friends randomly posted, and they were like, "This is the last time I'm going to be on Facebook. I'm tired of, digital spaces and blah, blah, blah. Goodbye." And I was just like, yeah, I was like, I get it. I do understand it, but
the thing is, I had people tell me that once. They were like,
hard.
hey, they want to get rid of information out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, give me 1 hour in front of a computer and I will scare you on what I know.
Right. Because
It's crazy.
In some ways, the damage is already done. Like
Definitely.
your face is already imprinted in AI models for facial recognition already, so there's no undoing it.
Right.
And I think a lot of these AI companies, like that model is so valuable, right? Because it represents the outcome of all of the data and all the machine learning and all the training. And so, there's talks about companies are wanting to merge models together and stuff like that. So what happens? What happens when TikTok is merging models with X or with, Facebook or whatever, and now it's like this super AI model, and then you have OpenAI, right? And so how does the average Joe or Jane navigate and have privacy and control over that stuff? I really think it's going to come down to you are either going to participate in the use of the tool or you're not. And
I respect that.
One has certain pros and cons, and the other has certain pros and cons, and it's going to have to come down to a personal decision that you make.
Right.
But the hard part is if you decide not to use it, when the entire economy is in that place or that space, right? When your ability to survive and thrive is predicated on you using that space or that thing, that's where it gets really difficult, And so there'll be this bifurcation of people who embrace the tech and just, it is what it is. We don't like it, but this is how we get by. And then people who are like, I'm going to go homestead in Alaska. I mean, I've made jokes with my wife before. I'm like, some days I'm like, gosh, I just want to go be a homesteader and go off grid,
Yeah.
But in reality, it's I have kids. I have 2 little kids. I have to teach them how to navigate this world, So that while that sounds like a great choice and a great option, that I don't think is the best thing. And so.
Yeah, it definitely will be interesting because I think when you start to have kids, that's when the aspect is changes everything. For me, it does, because you want your kids to be able to understand what the future and compete in the future.
Yes.
Because we all, I was actually last night, I was watching this YouTube it's documentary where this guy goes and finds these really wild people, and I think they were in the Appalachian Mountain.
Yeah.
And he came across these people that lived in this trailer, and they're all inbreds and and it sounds weird, but at the same time, that's where we're going, and that's what people are making this decision. Do you want to be those people,
right,
where you're in the middle of Alaska with nobody around?
Yeah.
And and I think some people want, but I mean, one of the guys, there was 8 kids there. Yeah. And one of the guys didn't even know how to speak. He just he barked because that's what the dogs do, and that's what he learned. And it's so I don't think you can. I don't think there's this middle ground. I think you're either choosing to go completely off grid, and I don't know, which I respect some of that in some ways.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
a personal decision. I think the thing is just you can't make the argument well, I'm not going to use this thing because of the privacy violations or whatnot, but then you're not going to say the same thing about this platform over here or this piece of tech over there, right? Because then it's just you're just upset at this one party because you don't like how they run their business necessarily,
right.
Like TikTok, let's say, but so you're not going to use TikTok. Does that mean that you're going to delete your YouTube account? Are you going to delete your Facebook account? Are you going to stay off of Instagram? Are you going to uninstall Netflix from your Roku device? Because all of them are collecting data.
Right.
And they're all collecting data and they're doing something with it.
Right.
And whether you give them permission or not, you gave them permission when you started using the thing.
Yeah.
And so, you can't really make an argument for just this one, but not for the others. I think that's how I feel about it personally.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I don't think people realize the power in data and like how dangerous it really is. I remember reading this article recently that George Soros, he originally started this company called Planeteer. I think I'm saying that like PLNTR or something like that. Planeteer.
Palantir?
Palantir.
Yeah.
And he started that, and it talked about when he started it, he didn't understand what it meant to collect data.
Yeah.
He just founded this company, and he was an investor in it, and it was fine. But then it progressed so quickly.
Yes.
And when it went public, you can't get out of that company quick. You when a company goes public, I don't know if most people realize this, you can't pull out of that company. You have to stay in it for a certain amount of years because they don't want you to all of a sudden tank the stock because you're the majority shareholder and you just sold it off to the public kind of thing. So it was kind of talking, this article I was reading, and it was talking about how he was coming up at that time where he was able to sell his shares, and he offloaded them because he didn't realize how dangerous data could be and what that company ended up being. And this is him coming from being one of the major investors in it. Which is pretty wild.
Data is also, I mean, in some ways, like especially a lot of businesses don't actually have a real good picture of their data. They just don't. A lot of them don't have the tools. A lot of them don't have the tooling, and then they don't have like the know-how and the engineering to like set up the pipelines and set up like the warehouse and like all that stuff. But I mean, in the business realm, though, I mean, we've helped companies find like revenue leaks that have been in existence for months that probably have costed them like tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars at scale because they just didn't have any visibility, you know. And so in some ways, it's like with data, especially businesses, it's like you really need to get a grip on your data and you need to start leveraging it like hard
100%.
Because all of your competitors are doing it, and there's data on the companies that leverage their data, and they're like 9% more competitive in the market.
I think
because of it. And so now for like the individual, walking around in this world, your data, I mean, I think a lot of companies have moved forward in terms of like, here's all of your data. Here's an export. Like I can go to my Google and it'll give me an export of all my data. I can go to Verizon and say, give me an export of all my data. I think that was a really critical first step in that direction. But yeah, I think that data can be dangerous. It certainly can, because information can be a weapon. So keeping data secure, that's where keeping data secure becomes like a very important thing, and especially in today's world, because it's just too easy to be vulnerable, and it's a never-ending cat and mouse game. But
can data not become important? Is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of redundant data.
Because there's just so much out there.
Oh yeah, there are things called data swamps. So a data swamp is basically where you have so much data, but it's not organized. There's no metadata around that data. So like imagine you have a table, like a SQL table database, okay? And let's say it's like millions and millions of rows in length. A data swamp can be, you have a ton of these different tables and they're all in one centralized like data lake, but there's no metadata around it. So it's hard to derive like importance and meaning around like what that data is. And so that's like what is called a data swamp. It's like we got so much data, but we can't make sense of any of it. None of it's workable. We can't leverage any of it because it's just a soup. It's just a big, nasty, muddy puddle, right? And so what we like to try to do is like if we're going to build like a data lake or a data warehouse or something like that, like part of it is you need some sort of cataloging mechanism, right? So we can say before this data from the source gets into the data lake, we need to apply some sort of meaningful metadata that we can pick up on and say like, oh, this is for accounting, right? Like this is for operations, sales, whatever. This is a dog. This is a picture of a cat, something, right? So that we can derive some meaning of it, because that data could be an image file that's, the name is like, IMJ_06754. And you're like, cool, what is that? Right. So like, how do I use that? And so, So yeah, data swamps are real, and actually a lot of the big companies, they pay a lot of money to like sift and refine that data into something that's workable and meaningful. Insurance companies actually struggle with this a lot. Like a lot of the big insurance companies have tons of data, and they want to embrace digital innovation, and they want data lake and data warehouse and BI and all that stuff, but like their raw data is so old and it's all dilapidated, and so they can't actually work with it. No data scientists or engineers can actually like easily work with it, and so
without
that's a data swamp.
through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of meetings, a lot of time. Like, hey, what is this thing? Like, there's a key index in it. You know, it's labeled AB underscore for everything. Like, what does that mean? You know, and so it's like trying to figure that out. And so, if you can do all that stuff up front and early on, you can prevent the creation of a data swamp. And so yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. It's a real thing.
AI will help with that though, don't you think? They'll be able to sift through all that stuff. It's because it's no different than the internet. If I want dog and I put in Google dog, I can go to images and see the picture of a dog. The issue you run into with the data swamps is if you don't label it dog, then you don't know. But if AI has a way to...
Absolutely.
I don't know.
This is why AI, like this whole big AI revolution that's happening right now, is so exciting, because it's really not that far away. I mean, right now I have some folks at the company working on some R&D to integrate ChatGPT to that business's data. So like right now, if you go to OpenAI ChatGPT and you're like, you know, how many sick days did so-and-so take, you know, over the last year? ChatGPT's like, it's going to hallucinate and make up something false, which is called a AI hallucination, or it's just going to say, I don't know, right? Because it doesn't have access to that domain knowledge. What we're working on trying to get it so that provided a company has a data lake and a data warehouse, we can plug that in to ChatGPT in a secure way where like somebody can have a prompt and they can say, ask the AI, like, I need you to go calculate like what were all of our expenses for 2021 and I need you to itemize it, right? And like ChatGPT, OpenAI will get that source domain knowledge. It gets sent as part of like the request, and then it only works against that data and produces an answer. Is there a concern
on how much information you're giving ChatGPT at that?
Yeah,
like that?
So they have documentation on this, OpenAI. It's actually really good documentation, and they give you controls over how long your data will persist in their model. Because anytime you interface with it, the model gets trained with that new data.
Right.
So, but it only lives for a certain period of time, and it depends on what API you're using, but they do have it documented. And so you can like do your operation and then make the call to like wipe all of your data from the model so that it's not in there, which I really appreciate them doing that, right? Because that's a big concern.
Yeah.
Them being no longer not profit, you know, nonprofit, now they're for profit. Like that's a good idea, because like somebody like me wants to build this thing, not if I can't ensure that like that data isn't going to be removed from your model, you know,
right? Because somebody else could take that data.
And then you also have a lot of software developers integrating these tools like into their code bases and into their repos. And what happens if somebody accidentally left like a secure key floating in plain text, and then like that file made its way to the AI, and like, you know, so we've seen it where we're asking coding questions to ChatGPT, and it literally will redact something, and then it will say like, oh, by the way, just so you know, you're sharing something that looks like it's probably sensitive, like you should probably not do that. And I go, bless you, thank you so much for you know, having that mechanism in there. So that's one form of that's one form of like sanitization, or it's like data sanitization, I guess. Right. And I think it's really good that they have that baked into that. So
I have only once ever had them write me code, ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I had them write me the Pong code because I wanted to see if it'd do it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if it'd do it. So I was like, write me the code for Pong, and it did.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm using ChatGPT right now to act as like a virtual developer for me, and I'm having it walk me through, like we're pair programming together, me and the AI, this app that my wife is like hey, could you build this app for me? And I was like, that's a cool idea. Yeah, I'll work on this on nights and we'll get something going for it. But I'm using it so like the first command that I gave it was like, you are a helpful assistant. You are an expert software developer. You work for my company. We're both going to pair program this thing together. I'm looking for you to provide me step-by-step instructions, but I also don't need you to like boil it down to like what an entry-level developer is. I'm a senior developer myself. We're both senior developers. Let's go build this thing together. And it's just, we're both kicking so much ass, like building this thing. Yeah. And it's doing a fabulous job of like keeping in context like some of the nuance of what we're building.
Wow.
Like, so one time I had to remind it, like once I had to say, hey, just so you remember, we're using this particular package, which means
That's
that
so
yada yada yada, and it goes, oh yeah, my bad, and then it never screws that up ever again after that. And so like that is incredible, and I can't wait to produce a lot of content around that. But yeah,
That's
man, AI
crazy.
it's here, it's happening right now, and I think it's going to be.
How do you think that's going to affect your business?
In a very great way.
Because
very great way.
I will be honest with you.
Yep.
This weekend, it was this weekend, I wanted to see how quick I can create a website for a business. And I was able to do it in less than 10 minutes. And it was fully designed, fully capable, functional website in 10 minutes.
Yep. So I think this is going to be
insane.
That's
where I think it's going to help us a lot is like, so like in that example, that's not necessarily something I think that really competes against us, because what we do at Kyros, we're doing a lot of like the really hard, challenging problem solving.
Yeah.
Like our stuff.
Yeah, like I have, 10 different data sources, and I want to get all these 10 data sources aggregated and into some BI tool, right? And ChatGPT is just not going to be able to boop, 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 spit that out and have that problem be solved. But for my line of work and what we do, it's actually been phenomenal so far, because this is actually one of my big passions for junior developers right now. It's really hard for junior devs out there right now because there's so many of them, but there's not enough jobs for them, and everybody wants senior developers. It's called the tragedy of commons. So what happens is when the commons is competing all for the same resources, it drives the price of that resource up, but then like all of the other options get overlooked. And so juniors right now are having a really hard time because there's more and more people getting into the space. They see a future for themselves, but there's no jobs, and they don't know how to hunt, and they don't know how to kill, and they don't know how to freelance, and like all these other things, right? That's its own job business opportunity in itself. I hope to explore someday. But but for AI though, AI is augmenting these junior developers to make them more senior faster. Right. So where there was a knowledge gap, no, I don't know Kotlin and I've never had an opportunity for Kotlin. Well, the job description says you need Kotlin. Like that can go away in a couple years, because it's like, I don't know Kotlin. I'll go take a crash course, become a Kotlin expert, but then I have this like Borg hive mind behind me that I can leverage to help me solve the Kotlin coding problem. So it's like, I think that is going to help out a lot, and it's going to reshift the balance, because a lot of the industry has been controlled over the last years from COVID by senior devs. And junior devs, it helps augment, but this also augments senior devs too. It's like a huge productivity booster in our line of work, and it's a huge time saver, because before you'd have to go to Google, you'd have to go to Stack Overflow, you'd have to see like, has anybody else run into this exact same problem scenario? No, crap. So now we got to try these things and hopefully we get it right. Versus now you can just have this conversation and it will break out to you like, follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you'll get there. And it's like, thank you. And most of the time, like 95% of the time, you follow those steps and it works. And it doesn't get it right all the time, but like my experience, 95% of the time in software development, it lays out exactly what you need to do, and in some cases even produces the code. Like in some cases. So it's really a huge scaling thing, because I remember talking to you, it wasn't even that long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, and you're like, the scaling, I'm having a trouble scaling because of that issue. Like, because
that's huge.
It's people's time. My business is people's time and expertise being engineers, right? And so what this does is it makes us able to produce more faster. So then that takes the cost barrier of getting something and it takes it drastically down, and then it makes getting into tech more affordable for folks who want to do a startup or folks that want to, bootstrap something. And so,
and even the end product, because let's talk about that for a little bit. Because I know we've spent
thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah, it's a lot. Custom software development can be very expensive, especially if you're onshore with U.S. developers. So what we typically see, at least in the last several years, is like, I have a new app idea. Yeah. Depending on the process, it's like, it's just to get something deployed that somebody can use, it could be anywhere from like $15,000 to like $150,000. It just kind of depends on what's in the box. What we're finding is that like ChatGPT AI, some of these other AI development tools that are coming out are making it so like that is getting driven down probably like 20-30%, probably, right? Because at the end of the day, you still need humans to figure out a lot of this stuff. Right.
I think the thing that they're not, that I don't think AI is doing really well is it's the same thing, the person that created the AI. Yeah. You still need the original input, right? And I think that's where context. I love, for me, it excites me because I would consider myself an extremely creative person. And I think you need creative people in this world to be able to input. Like, if you don't give it the idea, like, I want to create this app. Yep. And I wanted to do this, this, and this. They can do that. Yeah. But the original thought had to come from,
Correct. I think you're always going to have a pair. So, like, our industry is, they're worried that developers are going to be replaced by AI and that's going to happen soon. I'm of the belief that we're a long ways away from that, and you'll never really be replaced because somebody's going to have to keep this thing in check. Exactly. Meaning, like, somebody's going to need to review and make sure that like the AI actually got the thing right and it interpreted the query correctly. I think software developers' roles in the future will be more or less like pairing with these things and using these things to build together versus like this AI is going to replace me. Because the AI doesn't know that the business owner wants you to change the button color from red to blue. And they also don't know for what page on what web app for it to do. And so a human is still going to have to go in and be that glue in between.
I think the people that are going to hurt are the old school developers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I think you're unique. You.
Oh, thank you.
I do.
I do too.
And because I think what you're unique is I think you have an entrepreneur spirit and not 100% just an engineering mindset. I think the people that are stuck just in engineering are going to get crushed because AI can do their job.
Yeah, I
But then
agree.
you're over here like, I can pick up and I know what you, and you can put it together. So it's a creative person speaking to a creative person that knows a little bit more than I do in their field.
I think what I'm trying to tell my software developers is like really what you need to think about is you need to morph into a product delivery lead is what you need to morph into, because you still need all that technical background and know-how, but like you also like some things are going to be abstracted away from you that you can't control. Like my business one day might need to make the decision, we're going to have the AI write the code, not you. Like I might have to make that decision in the future, and that won't be an easy decision to make. But if it's a decision where it allows to employ more people and keep them gainfully employed and to help them afford their bills and to keep that thing going because I have to, because if I don't, we're going to get trampled, then, we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there. But your time as a software developer won't be a waste. There'll still be something for you to do that is purposeful and that can give you fulfillment. It's just you're not swinging the hammer. Now you're the person who's on the job site overseeing the builders. And so I think that's ultimately where it's going to go. I had a dream. The first dream that I remembered like in 6 months, because I'm always sleep exhausted because I have 2 kids under 2. But I had a dream, and it was kind of exciting, but also kind of scary. I had a dream that I actually created an integration between like our version control system and AI, so that like I would ask the AI, like, I want you to create the page and put the button here and submit a pull request, and that, it's going to be reviewed by a developer. And so then I was like, that's an interesting thought. And so then I started whiteboarding it out, and I went, oh, that's actually not hard to build. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like if I'm not the smartest person in the world, if I could figure that out, there's got to be a company out there that either already has all of this tech in place or they're working on it right now, and they got a bigger budget than I do. So this is going to happen. It's going to happen.
I also see in your future, I think what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up owning a lot of businesses, because people are going to come up to you. You're going to have a creative person that's going to come up to you and they're like, hey, I want to do this, 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 and this.
Yep.
I wanted to do this. And you're going to be like, oh, that's sweet. And you're going to be like, I don't know why you wouldn't just say, well, let's work out a deal, because my job's easy, but easier. But I know that there's some work that needs to be involved. I want to be able to monitor it, see what it does. I believe 100%. In a project. I want 50% or I want 30% of your ownership in this company, but let's do this thing.
Well, we've talked about that.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Yeah, I mean, it's a common topic of conversation that we get a lot of times. In fairness to like bootstrappers and startups, right? Like they're looking to get people bought in and skin in the game, and they're looking to get some sort of investment so that they can make their vision a reality. And so we have that conversation a lot, you know, and a lot of the times we say, that would have to be something outside of the realm of Kyros, because what we want Kyros to remain focused on its mission, which is like to do great software development. And if we have too many like special priorities, then like whose project or whatnot like gets so we can't do preferential treatment. So that's always a hard conversation to navigate. But I will say, it's like, if somebody is like, I have this idea, we're always open to talk about it. We're always open to see like what's a path forward that looks like a viable thing, and is it possible for partners to do something in this way? It would just have to be outside of the scope of this particular LLC, right? Because like this is what it is, you know.
You have to make everything separate,
right?
And the thing is like some of the things that we've talked about. Maybe it's not viable right this second, but with the developments of AI, if we revisit it in 6 months or a year, you'd be like, hey, let's do this thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? So it's crazy how quickly things can change.
Absolutely. AI is going to make it happen a lot faster too. It's just because, again, the time it takes to arrive at the end of the thought is now lightning fast, you know, and instead of getting assumptions wrong and things like that, now it's just a matter of prompt engineering. So are you guys familiar with prompt engineering?
No.
So you really should consider teaching yourself how to become a prompt engineer, because this is going to be a vital skill in the future with working with conversational AI especially. So prompt engineering is the art of articulating a prompt to an AI in a way where you are more likely to get the outcome that you want. Right. So how you ask the question. I think I've maybe been
doing this
you might
without
have been already.
Even knowing that I'm doing it.
But there's certain little skills and tactics that you can imply into your prompt.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned this.
That answer back.
I just joined a Facebook group. And that's exactly what it's called.
Prompt
it's for that, and it's interesting. I guess I didn't realize that's what that was. I'm like, okay, what is this about? And that's okay.
So I think that this is something where if the school systems are not going to teach the kids how to do this, then the parents need to learn it and then teach it to their kids, because it's going to be a big divider of like, can you use that like algebra calculator or not, right? Like if you can use the algebra calculator and, you know, put in the equation, you're going to get the outcome, versus the person who gets tripped up and can't properly input it in. They're not going to solve the problem as fast. It's going to take them longer. And so prompt engineering is something that everybody should explore and learn what it is, how to do it, right? Like
I would say I'm pretty good at it.
Because
I've been doing AI now and playing with it for a long time. I've even done things like make it sound like it came from a surfer and say, hey bro,
hey bro, gnarly dude, just do 1 2 3, So
I have played with that, and I think it just comes with experience. As the more you play with it and the more you do with it, but. So where do you when you think of AI as a whole, do you think AI, so I had this thought one night, I'm laying in bed and I thought to myself, I'm like, AI really is it working for us or against us? And then I got to thinking about it and I'm like, it has to be for humanity. I don't think there's a choice but to have it for the
Yeah.
best of humanity.
Yeah.
I don't think it's possible.
I think there's two kind of camps of thought here. There are the like transhumanists who believe that like someday like AI is going to morph into like this god and it's going to escape the velocity of like what humans can comprehend, and it's going to do it at a rate that's so fast. And I guess that's technically, that is a possibility. Elon Musk actually had a really interesting YouTube channel or talk on this where he was talking about like regulating AI, and it's a very split, touchy subject. But I think right now, at least for the next 50 years, I think we're in a golden age, I guess, where like AI is mostly at large going to be helping people a lot in a lot of different ways. And it's going to help move economies faster. I think it's going to help move people, into skill sets faster and all those things. But there's always that double-edged sword, right? Where it's like, well, I can make an AI that has like a malicious thing that it does, right? And so like that can always be a thing too. But I think we're a long way away from like having like they call it the singularity is what they call it. And so the singularity idea is that like all AIs are eventually going to merge into one like digital intelligence god that is so smart and so capable that people are essentially going to become slaves to it, and it's going to be like the Matrix. And so that could happen. I think what has to happen though is the people who make AI, especially like really advanced AI that can start to manipulate humans, like maybe lie to them or other things, they need to be built in a walled garden. So the idea is that like the AI will not be allowed to evolve outside of the boundaries of the walled garden unless if humans decide to allow it to evolve outside of those boundaries. And so the people who are working on like really advanced AI, they have to put that in place. And if they're not, then that's where regulation really kind of comes in. Right. And you can make an argument for it. Now, I don't know for me, I don't really know where I'm at in that camp yet. I keep thinking about it and I'm like, well, what about that? What about this? But I'm also like very like, I don't like regulation. I'm not very for it, but I understand we need it in some cases. But I think that's where things would have to head, is that people would have to make the critical mistakes of making AI that can negatively impact humans at scale, and it's not inside of some sort of walled garden, right? Where it can continue to evolve
natural
itself.
Ability, though, I think the natural state of AI has to lean towards the good.
Yes, I do too.
I don't think it can go bad unless it's designed to be bad, because
capitalism will make it for the good.
It has to be 100%. How can it not?
Majority. You'll have a couple bad actors like you always do, but if you're looking at the 90% or Pareto's law, right? Like the 80% is probably going to be for the good in the long run, I think.
Because you're talking about, let's just like the cure for cancer.
Sure.
You'd have to sit there and say, don't come because I want it to be for profit, but I want you to come up with a cure for cancer.
Right, yeah.
Like, you'd have to program that. Otherwise, that natural income, like me, if I'm punching, like, what's the cure for cancer?
Right.
AI is going to help me, assist me as an individual with that. And it's going to come down to individualism, and if that's a word, but for me directly, I want to come up with a cure for myself for cure cancer, right?
Yep.
So that information is going to be directly, AI is going to be able to help me with that, unless somebody is saying, don't help and assist him with that.
Generate 30 different chemical compounds that could possibly like kill certain cancer cells, right? And like have the model come up with those things. And I'm sure there's probably companies already doing all that, right? That,
actually invested in one.
I'm talking like as if I'm being creative and making something new. Like chances are that's probably already
they're
a thing.
already doing it.
But yeah, I mean, but that could be a really great thing. It could lead to the next great thing. So I just really see like a lot of this AI stuff is like there's like this little AI that's on your shoulder, and like it's either gonna be like
a little halo or
or little devil horns, and it really just kind of depends on how you're using it, know. And but at large, I mean, I've seen it in my own business already, like how much it's helped, like already just making things more cost effective, augment. I mean, I've used it to write like 32-page proposals.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
give me and just have it craft all of it. And it would have taken me days to get this thing done. And I got it done in like 4 hours, you know?
Right.
And so.
Which is awesome. Now
Yeah.
you have more time with your kids.
Right.
And,
right.
and your
Or moving on to
family.
the next, productivity thing, you know?
Right.
So.
So what's the future look like for you? So you have all this craziness with AI, and you're building a software company. Is that something that you see yourself moving forward with? Like, what does the future for like your company look like?
Yeah,
that?
I think the future for a software development company like ours with AI is helping to find ways to deliver those AI tools or resources to the broader economy in some way, shape, or form, right? So whether that's a real estate company or whether it's a logistics brokerage, it's basically trying to say, hey, you have this problem. Have you considered using AI to solve this problem? And then the next question becomes like, what's that look like in terms of cost and investment? And so I think for us, it'll be a little bit of that. I think a lot of it in the future is probably going to be a lot of the stuff that we're doing by hand today, that hand chiseling out the marble line by line, code by code. I think a lot of that is going to start to get augmented away to the AI progressively over the next couple of years. And then I think for software developers, really it's just going to be a change in role. They're still going to have to know how to be a software developer because again, you have to look at the AI like it's your software developer now. And you're the boss of it, right? And so you have to work with it. But I think that's probably where things are going. It's going to be a lot more data. I mean, we get a lot of requests still for like mobile apps and like this, web application and this, business startup idea. And we'll always do that. And that's great too. We're also finding a lot of needs within logistics spaces and things like that for like some of these lot more harder computer science problems, which is like, we got AI bots putting in bids, but we have no visibility on whether they're winning or losing the bids, and we don't have the data to like dial it in and make sure this automated bot, because you can scale up a problem just as much as you can scale up a solution, right? And so we're finding it's a lot of these harder tech problems that are coming to our door, and those are the type of projects that we're just engaging with a lot more, I think.
That's pretty cool.
Which is cool. Because it's nice, right? Because it's like, you want to feel like when you work on something that you are giving back to society somehow, right? Like this is why I'm not a day trader, like because I could go be a day trader and I could go trade stocks and futures and options, make a lot of money, but I'm like, cool, I enrich myself, but like I'm not. What am I giving back to society?
You want to be part of the community, and
not much,
absolutely.
Not much. So I think for us, it's going to change, but it's not going to change a lot, I think. So. Which is cool. That's fine. Yeah, like a little change is good. A lot of change too quick, and people start to freak out. So we don't want that.
I think people. I do believe that, like I said, we're recolonizing. I believe that, but I think people are going to start to. I believe small community. We're going to live in a big world, right? Globally, electronically, but I do believe with all my heart that we're going to start to see this. Bringing it back a little bit where we want
the
to
roots.
I think we will. I think we're gonna actually go back to. It's gonna sound crazy. But I think famous. Like we're so used to seeing these big, huge, famous people. I think we're gonna have it locally famous.
Yeah, I could see
you
that
might
too.
see local famous people, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, and then I think you're gonna bring it back down to instead of wearing Nikes, I'm wearing Nikes right now. It might be Joe that makes something similar, but he has a barn. And I'm not saying it's gonna be like maybe it might come down to small towns, but it might be within a 30, 40 million people.
I think it starts in the home.
Yeah.
I really think it starts in the home. I've caught myself a few times like just randomly scrolling through social media just like a brain dead zombie, and I'm like, what am I doing? My kids are right here.
Yeah.
Like I want to hang out with you.
That's
I want to learn
important.
about you. Like you're way more interesting than whatever the hell this Rolex is or whatever that's on my social media feed, and so I think it starts there. And then maybe trickles down to the neighborhood, right? And like when we first moved into my neighborhood, we didn't really know anybody, and we moved into a neighborhood where there's a lot of like older retired folks, and now slowly like more families are starting to emerge in our neighborhood, which is great. And like we're meeting these people, we're now creating friendships and connections and play dates, and I think that's like after a while people are going to get burned out a little bit by tech, and they're going to want to unplug. And I think that is a very good exercise. When I get home, I mean, it better be an emergency, because like otherwise, like I just don't want to be on my phone at all. I don't want to look at a computer screen. I don't want to talk about tech. I don't want to, because when I'm home, I'm like, dude, you're super cool and you're super cool, and I want to know more about you, and I want to spend time with you, because you're the most exciting thing that probably emerged versus TikTok, you know, or like Instagram.
And he's actually
just being in that state of mind. I think the more people can do that, I think that helps to facilitate what you're talking about.
Well, that's what made me spark me. My thinking is, you're like, oh, I want to be part of a community. I want to be, and it kind of sparked that. I'm like, I think that's a thing. I think that's what people are going to want and to do in life, and they're going to sit there and say, okay, like, I want to be present with people. I mean, how many people aren't like really present with people? And you know, and just saying, hey, you know, it's the attitude of, and I think that's why some of these YouTuber and podcasts is the more real and organic, and just I think that's what people want.
I agree.
Because what happens is we're all used to saying, hey, how's your day going?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Your day could be going awful.
Right. How's the weather?
How's the weather? And it's like, no, let's just be real. Like really, let's talk. Let's be organically real, and just like getting like ask the tough questions. Like our friends came in from Phoenix, and we were sitting in our hot tub, and we were just kind of talking about relationships. And what was interesting about it is me and my wife started just diving into their relationship, like digging. Yeah, like things that most people wouldn't even ask, like because you know, and it was just cool, because it was like, I said we should have if we would have got this on YouTube. Yeah, like we could have changed the lives today.
Right. Yeah.
Like serious lives, because they have a great relationship.
Sure.
Like
but probably, it sounds like a good story though too.
And 100% a good story, and they got so much good going on. But it's like, but doesn't mean it doesn't come with the realness, and that comes with struggles. Yeah. Like people want to say, oh yeah, your relationship's always perfect, but it's like, I
think the hard part is you have to find the people who have that reciprocity back and forth of like, I actually care that you're struggling to put the trim up in your basement, even though like it's not the most exciting topic in the world, but that's what you were doing yesterday. And so, like how did it go? Like, did you get it done? Do you need any help? You know, like actually having that conversation instead of just being like a robot, which is like cool.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what
conversation's over, right?
I came in and told it to Shelly. I go, every real estate company, they talk about the same thing. What do they talk about? This is our software. Yeah. This is our splits. Right. And we all have a great culture. Yep. And then the question, and I say all of it, it's good. You have to have those things. Yes. You have to have those things. Yep. And you want to have the best of those things. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who has my back and actually cares about me.
100%.
And I think you can bank your whole business, and that's what I heard you kind of say with yours. Yep. I can bank my whole business that I care about my customers and I care about my people. Yep. And in my people, I always say it. I said it in every podcast. My people are my people, because and it's like in my world. Yep. And people come in and go out of your world. Right. But in my world, my people are my people, and I'm going to take care of them. Yes. And I care about them. And what I found, and that's what Shelly did for me, was when I got into real estate, there's so much fear of doing things. Yeah. So let's say I'll pick on you. I want to create an app, and I do want to pitch you on one. Sure. Just for fun at some point. For it, yeah. And say, okay, well, I might have the greatest idea, but that's where you said software developers are always going to be needed, because I can't go into ChatGPT and say, hey, by the way, it's like I just need to be able to talk some crap to you. Yeah. And be like, this is what I'm thinking, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, Rennie, that's dumb. Yeah. Or you could be like, no, it's a great idea.
Poke holes.
Yeah, poke holes.
Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?
Yeah. AI can't poke holes.
AI can't do that.
Yeah. I don't know. I have a really good skill of poking holes at things, and like unabashedly, just and it's just to try to help. It's more about like hey, like I want to help you think through this thing before you just dive right in, right? Right. It's like, hey, I want to go buy the new, Ford F-150 truck off the lot. Like, have you thought about this, right? Like, like I'm not saying don't do it, but consider all of these things and make an informed decision. But yeah, that's the realness, right? Like, that's the reciprocity. Being an employer, and I'm sure you know about this, is like you feel a responsibility for all of the people who continue to show up every single day because you made a promise to them, and they're choosing to dedicate a lot of their time, obviously for pay, but also like their time, you know, which is very valuable. And it's like, so this thing that people are showing up to work on every single day, it has to be special. It can't just be a job, because there's a million of those out there, you know? And so it's like, we have to take care of our people. And part of that is culture. And part of that is being able to like have some water cooler talk every now and then. It's okay, you know? And so like setting all of that up, but it also comes down to making the right business decisions too. And I think it was Kevin O'Leary who said this, and I loved what he said, is like a company or a business exists to support the village, and if any decision that a business has to make doesn't positively impact the village, then that's not a decision that you don't make that decision.
Absolutely.
You know, and I believe that too.
I like that.
I believe it.
That's
and,
gold.
You know, I think so as business owners, sometimes it's hard because you have these hard problems to wrestle with, but that's why you have to have these important relationships with other people or other like-minded and successful people, because they can help you see things in a different way, so you don't make that wrong decision that negatively impacts that village, right?
One of my closest friends, he probably makes me mad more than most people.
Yeah.
But that's probably why he's my closest friend, right? Because he pokes holes and brings up things in my life that I'm like, it's crazy. Like, and I think that goes back to, you have to be okay with having people tell you no. Or tell you, I mean, as long as you know they care about you. So that takes time to build that trust. But if you have the right people in your life and can be critical with you.
You do not want to be surrounded by nothing but yes men and women.
Right.
Yeah.
For real.
You want people, especially in an organization, but even outside of business, just in life in general, like you want people who are going to be able to keep you in check, and maybe you're not going to agree on everything, you know, and that's okay. But like, I would rather have the person who cares enough to go out of their way to say something,
or
hold
you accountable.
You know? And I think that's, you know, the whole digital age that we're in right now, and social media and all of that. There's nothing social about social media, and it's turned a lot of us into like, we don't. Hey, I'm in line, you're in line, we're ordering a burger. Like, you look like interesting. Like, what's your hat all about? What's your t-shirt all about? Like, that's weird. Like, people think that that's weird to have that random interaction. But that's the way it used to be before all this stuff, is what I heard. And, you know, I don't know. I was born in 90, and then all this stuff came about. But I would rather have more of those people around.
Well, the thing is, people want it.
Yeah.
Because, like, I could tell you some crazy stories, because I'm that guy. That like, there was a guy that was at an ice cream store, and he had tattoos from his head all the way down his head. His leg, it was cut off with a peg leg on it. Dang. And I just went up to him and was like, hey, simple. I was like, tell me about your tattoos. Like, you got a lot of blue. Like, his whole head was blue, his ears were blue, his arms. And I'm like, and he had the craziest story I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, and but real. And it was like, and I can tell you some stories like that are absolutely insane. Like, just like, you're like, what? Like, one of them, this guy was telling me, he was telling me details of why we didn't go into Benghazi when all that was going on.
Oh, wow.
He knew every detail. He said he was the one reporting directly to Michael Flynn.
No way.
Like, he was telling me this stuff, and I'm like, you guys,
that's wild.
And I'm in Puerto Rico,
careful,
and this guy, and I'm like, is this guy legit? And his son's like right next to me, like a really young kid or whatever, sitting right next to me, and his dad's like, and he's kind of like confirming some of this stuff. And I'm like, what the heck? Like,
you don't know who you're gonna bump into.
You don't. Like, you're like,
you're not gonna get that experience scrolling on social media.
No way.
No.
You know.
So if you truly care about people, truly. Because people can see if you don't. If you truly are just sitting there like, hey, like, tell me about your life. What's going on? And that's why I think, you know, I love doing this podcast, because I genuinely, I do care about people.
Yeah, for sure. Same. And even just like, just checking in with people sometimes too, I think is really important. Like, hey, like, it's not just like, hey, how are you? How's it going? It's like, okay, don't bullshit me. All right. Like, I can tell something's not right. Like, what's happening? Talk to me. You know what I mean? And like, being able to do that, I think is really important too. And picking up on that cue where people are like, they have their mask on, you know, and like, ask them, like, take your mask off for just a second, you know, like, let's go talk in private or whatnot. Right. And like, you know, I think that's super important, because I think it's kind of diminished a lot. Like, that's gone away a lot in some ways. People are too afraid to ask the question that is going to be like, you know, a triggering question, or like
And what I notice is the people that if I do trigger somebody the wrong way, if I come with love and gentleness with somebody and they take it the wrong way, and that does happen. And they run. It's because they have things that they have to deal with on their own. Because and it has nothing to do with, that's not a me thing, right? It's like, no, I genuinely care. And so it could be something where you say, hey, Rennie, I don't like your shirt. And we're talking junk. You could say that to me. I'm like, I get mad and I don't want to talk to you anymore. Because you said I didn't like my shirt. But the fact is, if I believe my shirt's good, I don't care what you say because I'm wearing the coolest shirt in the entire world. But if I have an issue and I'm questioning my shirt, and now I leave. And then it's like, am I making sense? Or
you're making sense. Basically, you don't know if you're going to trigger somebody insecurity. You don't know, but it would probably be better to be authentic and you still trigger that insecurity and cause some sort of like unintended conflict versus the opposite, which is playing it too safe and never actually really having like 100%. An in-depth intellectual conversation with somebody. You know, because like that's the real good stuff in life. Like that's part of the real good stuff in life. You know. We could all day like, look at the bottle, it's blue. Oh, cool, there's a beach there. Yeah, okay, sweet. Yeah, you see the waves? Yeah, cool. And we could have a conversation about that for like hours, but there's no depth. There's no meaning. There's no, hey, I walked away with something and you walked away with something too, you know?
So I took my kids to the beach yesterday, and that was one of the things that I had a car full of kids in my car yesterday. And it's just having those tough conversations because I heard some of the conversations going on with them. And I said to them, I go, what's the difference? And it's just these deep questions you ask them. I said, so what's the difference? Would you guys consider yourself good people?
Yeah, good question.
I go, or are you nice to people? I go, because the fact is Hitler, people loved him.
Oh, yeah.
His people loved him.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't mean he was a good person.
No.
So what makes a good person compared to you are a nice person?
Yeah. I think it was Jordan B. Peterson. I watched a YouTube video from him many years ago, and he actually was talking about Carl Jung. And there's this idea that, like, if you want to be like the best version of yourself, you have to recognize yourself as a monster first, that you are capable of extreme damage and violence and terrible things, and that you have control over that, and that you recognize your capacity to do bad, and you have a stranglehold on it so that you can do nothing but good. Because if you don't know that you could unintentionally be acting in that like monster mode when you don't realize it, right? And so being nice or like being a good person, I think somebody has to judge you on whether you're being good or not. You know, you can say I'm good as you know, like kick the dog, you know, but the problem is like being good is in the eyes of all of the beholders in front of you. And so, you know, that's part of it, I think.
I think it's the fundamentals of what you live by.
You're definitely your morals, your ethics.
That's all it comes down to.
Your identity, your culture, all of that stuff will make an impact whether you are ultimately a good person or not, but society will have to judge whether you're good or not. You can be nice all day long, but
society will judge. I think society is false most of the time. I think if society is following you because they think you're being a good person, most of the time, and this even comes to some charitable organizations, they come off good. Doesn't mean they all are good.
No.
And so just because people, and I notice the people that want to look good, typically, not always, but a decent amount of time, the people that you see and when are good people. It's just like, if you're telling people they don't like what they don't like to hear, but you know what'll make them better. Like I always joke with people and say, if I go right now and I punch you in the face right now, but I know for a fact that it's going to cause problems for this YouTube channel, but it's going to make you a better person, a better husband, a better father. Was it worth me punching you in the face? Society will say, no, I was an awful person.
It's awful, yeah.
But if I punch you in the face right now, and I truly know it's going to make you a better husband. Is it worth it?
I guess it depends on who's getting punched, really.
I think every time it's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, well, so here's how I interpret that. If you care about people. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is that you're not going to filter out the suck and the not fun so that you can grow. right? And that you can be a better version of yourself. It's like why you parent your kids and why there might be a consequence to their action, and you have to reinforce that boundary, right? And so yeah, it's like, it sucks. It feels like a punch in the face, but it's ultimately for your own good. And I think that just kind of goes back to being resilient again, right? It's like you should embrace the suck. You should
I like that.
invite the suck, and because you can use that to level up. And you want those, kinks in the chain, you want those to be exposed.
Yeah.
If you want to be a resilient person, you want those to be exposed. If you don't want to be a resilient person, then you don't want anything to do with any of what I just said.
No.
But I think a lot of us want to be resilient, and part of that is getting negative feedback. And so, my wife and I have had some hot topic conversations about this, but I'm like, honey, I have to work on giving you negative feedback the way that you want me to give you negative feedback, right? But I'm going to give you the negative feedback because it's important, because it's truth, and I'm not going to lie to you, right? However, I'm used to being a male with, a house of 4 boys, where negative feedback is just the daily. That was like the daily for forever, is like, you're an idiot, you suck. No, you're an idiot, you suck, right? And like the whole pecking order of male hierarchies and things like that. And it's just like, that's the way life is supposed to be. That's how it is. And that negative, but it's negative feedback though. And so I think a lot of times, a lot of guys are very used to getting negative feedback because that's where we thrive, that's where we live, and that's just 100%. How things are, and so I don't know, but I like the negative feedback. I want people who work for me who are gonna have no problem basically saying like, this is crap.
100%.
Like, what this is or how we're doing it is crap, and then here's the way to do it
because
better,
that's how you make it better,
right?
If people just come in and
punch a clock
and
job done,
and do what you told them to do, but never give you any feedback, and then go and complain about it over here,
right,
and you get all this little chatter over here, then it corrupts the whole thing.
Yes, it does. It's toxic too.
It's toxic.
We've seen this. I've seen this.
Come to me and tell me what's not working.
And I know you can handle it.
Yeah, right.
I can handle
That's
it.
what I say is, I'm like, it's going to take a lot for you to hurt my feelings.
Exactly.
Because
but there's a difference, and I think this is what we're missing in society. Is I think there's a big difference between doing it though with honor and respect.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people aren't doing it, and I think there is a way of doing it. I think Shelly, like we've done this back and forth, but picking on her second is I've done this to her before, was pretty brutally honest with her before, and it came from a place of honor. I think she knows. I don't think she questions. Sometimes I'll go. I think even Derek, I think they both know that I'll come and I'll be off the chain crazy at a moment. But it comes from, and I'll say things, but it comes from a place of honor and respecting them. Right? And saying, no, I give a crap about you. Right. That I don't want this to be disastrous. So let's hash this out. Let's fight.
Yeah. Well, let's have the argument and the debate for your side and my side, and hopefully the best idea wins. Right. I've had this with my business partners. I've had this with my wife. I've had this with my toddler, and that's healthy to do that. There is an art to doing that, I think, and like being a good communicator and making sure that when you communicate.
I've done an awful job at times.
You want, and I have to remind myself of this every now and then, because I'll make a misstep in my own relationship with my wife or, friends or whatever. And, it's being able to calibrate, like, I'm going to deliver you this thought, right? But how I deliver that, I don't want there to be any fuzziness or noise in that signal. I just want you to get it, and I want to do a good job at making sure that you just get it. And so maybe that is coming in an empathetic tone for you. And maybe for you, it's stop being an asshole.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so, and so the trick is, I think, is like, you have to learn what makes people tick, and you need to learn what makes them put up barriers and blockers. Right. Right. And the only way you can do that is you have to get to know somebody, number one. And then you actually have to enter into that, like, we're going to have a hard conversation today. So strap on your big boy or big girl pants, right? And because we have to talk about this,
Right.
And, so,
and I think that's coming out of a place where you're living in agreement with people,
Right.
instead of making assumptions. Because if you're making assumptions about whatever is happening, you're the bad one.
Right.
If you're just, you're just, okay, hey, Rennie, we're going to do this thing. We're going to build this podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that he knows exactly what I'm thinking.
Yep.
And we're just going along. And then all of a sudden there's this big blow up. Well, I'm the bad one because I assumed that you were with me. But if we hash it out and we talk about it and we come to an agreement, that's so much better.
Oh yeah.
It's so much better.
Expectations management.
Yes, exactly.
Be an expert. I think I made a video on this on LinkedIn or whatever. It's like you need to master the art of setting and managing expectations, because expectations can change. You set them and then like 24 hours later they've completely changed, and and so like being really good and staying on top of that, I think, is really important. And you're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but it's something when you have that light bulb that goes off in your head, like, oh, I think I see what's going on here. Expectations are not lined up. We have to line these up sooner rather than later, and no assumptions. That's actually why I love what I do and what we do, is because we can't operate out of any assumptions.
No.
So if there's an
Especially
assumption at all,
like
everybody has to laser beam, send the missiles in and say, like, blow this out of the water, because we can't allow any assumptions, because one semicolon in the wrong spot can crash the entire application, right? So you're like, so it's like,
that's insane.
So we can't assume anything, and I think that has been
what a
actually
great lesson for life.
Yeah, right. Carries over everywhere else.
It carries over everywhere else.
Yep.
Don't assume.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the hard part is finding where those hidden embedded assumptions are.
Right.
Getting those things to surface and expose them so that you can actually go try to remedy it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping I'm doing for again, you don't know until the end of your life. I'm hoping I do that for my whole life.
Same.
So like I have no problem poking the bear and it was friends, family, because I think the people that will hang it out with you will be the ones that towards the end of your life you're like, these are my people.
Yeah.
Like these are the real people. Like we battled and we fought, we cried, we've done some stuff. Right. But these are the people that have stuck it out with me because they're not running and hiding. Yeah. And they're addressing, and they do the things that align with where you're trying to go, doing things. Like me, I want to be around people that do things. I don't care what they are. I don't care if you want to go be a missionary or if you want to be a business owner.
Lego builder.
It doesn't matter. I just want, as long as you have some ambition in life, I can hang with you all day and have conversations and care about you. And so that's kind of like one of my things that align for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. So Nathan, what kind of advice would you give for somebody that's an aspiring entrepreneur and in the tech, with tech?
Sure. Well, I think for an aspiring entrepreneur, I think my first advice is that you need to come to terms with immersing yourself in what you're about to embark on. And you need to realize that it's going to be a journey with a lot of unexpected turns and twists, and you need to be able to look yourself in the mirror and say, am I prepared to deal with all of the bad stuff that also is going to happen, as well as the good stuff? Because a lot of people, I think, get into entrepreneurism, and I think it's great, and the more entrepreneurs, the better. But I think a lot of folks haven't really fully had that conversation with themselves to understand that, like, you're gonna have to put on some body armor sometimes. And
that's good.
That's the not fun part about entrepreneurism. Now on the other hand, it can be very rewarding, and if you're very successful at it, that can be an amazing thing. And so you'll be very grateful that you decided to make that journey, but recognize that it is a journey, not a destination. As far as like being in the tech space, my advice would be, your idea has probably already been thought through and tested more than once. And that's not to say that you shouldn't pursue it, but it's to say that you need to go seek out those people who have tried your idea or similar, and you need to befriend them, and you need to learn about what worked and what didn't work. Because if you really are serious about being successful in tech, there's a lot of landmines, and there's a lot of traps, and there's a lot of hurricanes, and you need to talk with somebody who's seasoned and experienced, and you need to learn from their stories and from their do this, don't do that. And the only reason why is because it can be a massive time saver, and it can also be a massive stress saver, because in tech, if it's not just like your thing that you own, if you're working on like other people's tech and you're a steward for those tech pieces, there's not a large margin for error. And in our line of work, we're held to an extremely high standard where, we're just kind of expected to be perfect in execution all the time. And that's how it is. But that's not how it's always going to be. Sometimes missteps are going to be made, but the best thing you can do is you can find somebody who's already been there and done it, and then like get them as a buddy or a mentor, and like learn from them prior to you just going hard in the paint, like building this thing. If I could roll back time, it's not a regret, but I would have done things a little bit differently. What I would have done is I actually would have gone and been an employee at a place first and learned all of the ins and outs of how the business ticks prior to me going into ego mode and saying, I'm going to be self-employed, I'm my own boss, and so I'm going to go build this thing and grind. And I could have probably... It's like chutes and ladders, right? Like I could have taken some chutes or some ladders and avoided some chutes falling back down.
Definitely.
If I would have had that like wisdom. And so
what's interesting is a lot of these big franchise companies, when you call them now, like I've called on Crumble Cookies. Another one was Dutch Bros Coffee, because I wanted to get a Dutch Bros this way, because it's Dutch Town over here,
right?
But yet we have no Dutch Bros Coffee over here. So I called on them, and they only let employees buy their franchises.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it kind of reminds me of that, because I think that they know that. They figured that out. They're like, wait a minute. Yeah. You have to understand like how things work before you could save yourself some headache.
Yeah, I guess my last piece of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, just in general, is if you are not a leader, or you're in a leadership position, you should probably start investing in yourself right away to start to become an effective leader. And what that means is you need to be able to obviously lead from the front and from the rear, but you have to be able to clone yourself and to create other leaders. And if you don't learn that skill, that's also going to be very, very hard, because you're going to be in a position where you're doing everything by yourself.
Right.
And you're not able to establish a process, communicate that process, have multiple people operate and improve against that process. That requires some sort of leadership and accountability. And if you don't have that skill, or you're not confident enough or secure enough with yourself to step into that role without any hesitation, then you have no business being an entrepreneur, because you have to be a leader, I think, unless if it's just I'm an entrepreneur, I'm self-employed, and it's just me.
Right.
If you can be successful in business like that, then I guess technically you don't need to be a leader. But most businesses require more than just you to be successful and grow.
Right.
You have to become a leader. You have to constantly become a better leader, and you need to create new leaders as your enterprise grows and grows and grows.
That's good.
Yeah.
So
that's very good. That's very good.
Yeah,
and if you screw that up, you're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the people I see that own companies that definitely are developing and harnessing their development of their leadership skills. It's almost like a selfish thing. Like you almost like selfishly have to be about yourself a little bit when it comes to your development, because if you're the best you that shows up every single day, then everybody else can depend on the best you, and then vice versa. They want to be the best them because they can see what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. So that's why I need to get back in the gym. So like I keep putting that off. I need to get back in there,
Okay, a little advice, because I have older kids now. A little advice to you is you have to also give yourself grace for seasons of life that you're in.
Couldn't agree more.
You're in a season of craziness.
Yeah, man.
Accept it enjoy it and be okay with it.
I feel like I have. I feel like in the first year when my daughter was like 1 year old, I think I really struggled with that hard because I'm still motivated and I'm like, go, want to build a business, want to do all these things, right?
Can't
and then like
keep in shape.
Personal life and business life just really butting heads a lot there. And so that was a hard lesson for me to learn, is like to just be like, it's just chapter 5.
Yeah.
And like in 2 years from now, it's going to be chapter 6.
Yes.
And chapter 6 is going to be way different than chapter 5. And so like at some point you have to accept that.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't become an excuse for non-action.
That's right.
100%.
You know, then I
That's
think you're
right.
good. So,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if somebody's listening to this podcast and they're like, hey, I need a good software development company to come in and help me grow, and I really like this Nathan Jean guy.
Sure.
How
Somebody that
are
has
they?
your back. He's
Somebody that has
he's
your
definitely
back.
saved us.
Yeah, thank you.
Saved our
Yeah.
butts.
Yeah.
That's right.
Sure.
How do they get a hold of you, Nathan?
So I think the best way to get a hold of us is probably to go to kyrosdigital.com. That's our website. But beyond that, we do have a business LinkedIn. So I would say go to that LinkedIn account. And so if you just go to LinkedIn and type in Kyros Digital, we'll probably pop up there. I don't think there's a lot of Kyros Digitals out there. That's probably the best way. We're really hyperactive with monitoring like those particular communication channels. Beyond that, you can probably get in touch with me. You can find me on social media. Just look up Real Nathan Jean. You'll probably find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. And so, I would say those are probably the best ways to get a hold of us. And yeah, Kyros Digital, we're a top tier software engineering firm. We are engineers. That's our bread and butter. That's what we're really good at. We're really good at saying, there's this thing, we want to build it. It requires code. It requires tech, IT, you name it, mostly software. And our job is basically to figure out how can we produce this best expected outcome. What are the steps involved? And then we carry out the actual work of producing and building those steps, maintaining the software, you name it. So if it's, I need to know how much this thing is going to cost.
Yep.
This isn't working anymore. How can we make it work? Or I have this new exciting idea. We're the folks who are going to be able to architect it, engineer it. We're not the marketers. That's not what we do. We're the code slingers and the engineers and the bright minds that actually make this thing exist.
Yeah.
So
That's
Awesome.
good.
yeah.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Thanks.
Awesome. Well, we're at the point in the show.
Yeah.
You've seen that blue bottle sitting there.
Message in a bottle.
Yeah. So at the Shoreline Show,
Yeah.
if you were walking on the beach and you found a bottle with a message in it, usually that message is pretty important that's in that bottle. And so our last guest left a message for you.
Okay, so you want me to take it out and read it?
Yes. Take it out and read it. Yep.
Let's see it. I mean, I've been hit with a lot of the hard questions today, so this is probably going to be a walk in the park. All right, so here's what the question says. I love it. It's even on like parchment.
Yep.
So it says, what is your favorite book and movie and why? Ooh, hard. My favorite book. I think my favorite book is How to Create a Mind from Ray Kurzweil. So Ray Kurzweil's book on how to create a mind, it actually gets into the science of like if you were going to make a digital like representation of the human mind, how would you do that? And the really cool thing about it is it gets really deep into actual like brain science and like
That's pretty cool.
how neurons work and like the cross stitching of your neural pathways. And there's an idea in there. It's not something Ray came up with, but it's called the hierarchical Markov model. I think I said that correctly. If you haven't learned what that is how the human mind works in a nutshell. Like, in order to understand what the letter A is, you have to kind of break that idea out into smaller subcomponents, and then it's the process of thinking that is the thought. It's not the end of the thought that is the thought. So there's a lot of really cool things where
I would love that book. Yeah,
hey, even though this is about like how do I create a digital mind, it actually goes really deep into like how the human mind and how the brain works. And I think if you can learn a lot about how the human brain works, you actually will find a lot of interesting new conclusions about yourself and your soul and your personality and your identity and all that stuff. Because when you understand how this works, you start to look inwards and say, hey, what am I doing here? Why does it always default to just firing off this way? You know what I mean? And so that book is really, really cool. It's definitely a techie book, but very interesting read that not a lot of people know about. And then I think my favorite movie, I think my favorite movie is actually, right now, I think it's actually Interstellar.
Never seen it.
So Interstellar is with Matthew McConaughey, and they go out into space, and they're on like this mission, and then eventually, like the long story is like they go like the speed of light, and they're looking for like habitable other Earths, and the faster they move away from light, like time goes way fast and time goes slow for them. Right. And then eventually like he goes into a black hole, and it's this super cool thing. And I think that movie for me, I think is just like, I don't know, there's something really cool about it where I'm like, if that's how black holes work, like that's pretty wild. Yeah. So, but that's my favorite movie, I think.
That's pretty cool.
Interstellar.
Right now. Who knows? Maybe the Oppenheimer movie that just came out will be my new favorite movie. I've been wanting to watch that for a while, but I haven't had an opportunity to do it.
Not Barbie?
So, no, probably not. Probably not Barbie. I mean, if my wife wants to watch Barbie, I'll watch Barbie with you, honey. But I'm not gonna go see Barbie by myself or with my buddies. So.